Hello, everyone, and a huge welcome to our third worldwide Carnosine Academy. We are streaming globally today across Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, so let us know where you're watching from. Are you joining us live, catching the recording? Please jump in the comments because we love hearing from you as we're building this community. A reminder today that the information that we're sharing is for educational and informational purposes only. There's no intention to diagnose, treat, or cure or prevent any disease. So always consult your qualified professional. So very soon, these events are going to be live and in person with standing ovations, cheers, and all of that, because the topic of carnosine is fast becoming a revolution in the health world. I want you to take a look at this graphic. This is a screenshot from the National Library of Medicine, which houses peer-reviewed published studies from journals worldwide. Now, I'm not a scientist. We have some scientists on this today. You know, we have some serious science. This is an academy conversation, so it is going to get a bit sciencey. But this is a search for studies on carnosine. Now, I had never heard of carnosine, so you might not have either, but I really just want you to take note of this growth. As you can see in the red circle, there's a number of studies has exploded over the past 20 years. And in this green circle here, we're about to cross 3,500 studies. That's over 100 new studies since our very first conversation around carnosine just a few short months ago. So always feel free to Google or look up carnosine and anything, and you will see just where this is going. Scientists are saying that the scope of this research is more diverse than anything that they've ever seen in the health and wellness space. In a world that is flooded constantly, we're flooded with things that are going to help our well-being. This research and what we're seeing here is just confirmation around the growth here. There seems to be a growing consensus around carnosine and where it is going. Some scientists are even calling it the longevity molecule. Anyone here interested in a bit of longevity? Type that in the comments. I think everyone is. Comparing it to some of the most powerful reparative peptides known today. Peptides are everywhere, and that is what we have our hands on here, a dipeptide carnosine. We're going to learn more about that. But yet, the interesting thing is no one in the world has ever heard of this remarkable molecule. And we're going to find out a little bit more today as to why that is. But we're going to take another jump, a giant leap in changing the fact that no one has heard about it. And this is what these calls and sessions are all about. Today, we are going to explore what is carnosine. After 100 years of science, why doesn't anyone know about it? And what is all the excitement about? What are the benefits of carnosine and who is it for? And how can you and us as everyday people take advantage of carnosine and be a part of the incredible benefits that we're about to learn about? So to guide us through all of this, there really is no one better on the planet than our keynote speaker, Chad Macias. And we're also, I think we've got a special guest joining us as well, another leading expert, Dr. Tim Sharp. They have been at the forefront of this conversation for nearly 2 decades, and they've played a pivotal role in advancing this 100 years of research that you've just seen there. They're helping to bring an innovative technology to the market that's allowing the world to finally discover carnosine. Let me just give you a little snapshot of Chad's credentials before I introduce him. He's a 2-sport Olympic athlete, a performance strategist for some of the world's most elite athletes across track, field, MMA, boxing, marathons. The list goes on. Every major league sport in North America. He's a consultant contracted by the Department of Defense, working with Navy SEALs, and founder of the Human Kinetics Institute. He's a molecular biologist specializing in human performance science, and he's a dad, and he's a human like everyone, but you will just love talking to and hearing from Chad Macias.
9 lives, cat size, so please remember one of them. Hi, how's everybody?
Hey, hey, Chad. I know you don't like all that hype and all of that, but it's just amazing the work you've done, and we just want to give you that credit.
Oh, appreciate that.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Oh, it's great to have you here. Let's start at the beginning here because loads of our viewers have probably never heard of carnosine, and I hadn't as well. And I just have been loving tuning in and learning from you over these past months. Could you take us back to where you were first introduced to this technology that was said to buffer lactic acid? Had you even heard of carnosine at that point?
Well, I had heard of carnosine before, so this would be going back to 2014. Um, I was familiar with carnosine, the peptide, through the beta alanine scientific literature because it is pretty robust. So it's an area of the literature that has have quite a few studies conducted in sports performance. And so a lot of performance coaches would use beta alanine supplementation, and they would take the time to figure out if their athletes were going to respond to it or not. And there's the whole process with that. So I was familiar with that process and carnosine itself, but I had never seen anything that was efficacious across all populations, and so I kind of had avoided it for the most part.
So, what exactly is it, and why is it so powerful? Can you explain that? Oh, I think we may have lost Chad there. Oh, here he is. Sorry, we have a little bit of a glitch today, guys. Bear with us. Can you hear me,
I
Chad?
can't. Can you hear me, Grace?
Yes, I can. Can you
I
hear
can't
me?
hear you.
Okay.
Hold
Maybe
on a
we can
sec.
call on. Can you hear me, Tim? Are you there, Tim? Oh, no. Hmm. Just bear with us for a moment, guys. Technical difficulties do happen at times. We'll just wait for Chad to get back on. He's entering again now.
I can hear you now.
Okay, that's
Sweet.
wonderful.
Okay.
I'm not flapping at all. Thanks for your patience, everyone. So let's dive back into what carnosine is. So, for someone that may have never heard about it before, could you explain what exactly it is? And if it's so powerful and there's so much research on it, why haven't we been inundated with hundreds of brands and products thus far?
Sure. So carnosine, if we're gonna, I'll do the nerd version of it. It would be classified as a cytoplasmic neuropeptide. And so what that means is that it's a dipeptide. And the reason that it hasn't been more widely discussed and become more of a mainstream pop culture buzzword, outside of the fact that it's a peptide, is because, as I mentioned just a few minutes ago, there's a very high non-responder rate when you orally supplement with beta alanine or whole carnosine. And so, on the medical side of things, we can't conduct clinical trials when we don't know if the person that's involved in the trial is even going to be a responder to the primary intervention. And so it doesn't reach the state where it can be a prescribed dose effect clinically for anything that exists in the biomedical research space. And so everywhere that we would look at a problem, like say diabetes, for example, and say, oh, well, the iron that is responsible for the insulin resistance and mechanistically that could really be chelated by carnosine, we don't really have a way to guarantee that we can elevate it, especially with carnosinase in the plasma. it's well known in the scientific community when you look at the literature that the body has something in the blood, in the plasma, called carnosinase. And when we ingest carnosine or beta alanine, it triggers the release of that into the bloodstream. So if we wanted to deal with something in the bloodstream like diabetes, it can be very difficult for people who have high carnosinase release upon the ingestion of carnosine, dietary sources of it. And so there's just not a real way where we can say, hey, take this carnosine pill, or take this, eat all these steaks that have all this carnosine in it, and it's going to lead to a medicinal effect. It may or it may not. It most likely is not, based upon what's in the literature. We do see some good response in clinical trials, but um, that's with certain things that are easy for it to access, even under those conditions. There's a response to it, but primarily that's the big hurdle, is that we don't have a way to assure that there's going to be a similar unified effect for each individual, that they can take this carnosine and see this impact somewhere in the body.
Okay, and so this is where I suppose your life changed as well, because you were introduced to a topical technology that's designed to deliver carnosine directly to the skin and the muscles and the bloodstream. So what did that mean to you? What was your reaction? And what were you told about it?
So basically, with the topical technologies that are already in existence, and the emergence of topical carnosine, it was something that I hadn't really thought about, knowing about carnosine, but never thought about that delivery route. And so, I mean, it makes a lot of sense because you're applying it to the places that have the largest surface area and can provide the greatest access to the soft tissue, skeletal muscle, connective tissue, ligaments and tendons, etc., as well as potentially the bloodstream, or other places that you would seek to have it have an acute or more of a systemic impact. And so that is, you know, eliminates first pass metabolism and the body's own check valve for preventing carnosine from being therapeutic in the body, which is the release of that carnosinase. Also eliminates a lot of the challenges when you are orally dosing anything. There's a requirement of good blood flow to that tissue space or joint capsule or whatever it is that we're trying to deliver something to via the bloodstream. And there's a lot of places in the body that just don't have that. And that's why you see things in the distal extremities, like diabetes with the neuropathy in the feet, in areas where that you have a very limited blood flow. So there's not a lot of pharmacology that can have an impact there. And so there's a lot of situations like that where it would be much more advantageous to have something that you can apply acutely, that has a rapid impact, that could potentially have carnosine doing all the different things that are described in the scientific literature.
Yeah, wonderful. I've been using the gel on my daughter's growing pains. So for children as well, it gets past that barrier.
I lost you again on the sound.
Okay. I think it seems to be when I take myself off mute. So I'll just keep myself off mute. Chad's going to come back in a second. But before he comes in, so Chad has worked with world-class athletes, record breakers, champions across multiple disciplines. Hopefully he can hear me now.
I can.
Okay, great. I'm just not going to mute myself. I feel like when I do that, it changes things. So I was just saying, that you've worked with everybody that's anybody in the world of Olympics and athletes. Could you share a few names and stories about the impact of carnosine, since you started testing it with people, has had in the sporting world?
Yeah, sure. So we at Institute for Human Kinetics, Dr. Sharp and I, we had quite a few Olympic athletes through 4 Olympic cycles, so 4 different Olympic games. So we did work with a lot of the athletes from Racers Track Club and Coach Mills, which would have been Usain Bolt, Safa Powell, and those guys. And then also, we had Brittany Reese and Dalia Muhammad and Carlin Isles and a whole bunch of other sprint athletes, Kevin Sorrell. And so a bunch of people that were already kind of at the top and had consistently won gold medal at multiple Olympic Games. But it wasn't until the introduction of carnosine into their daily routine that we started to break those drug era records that kind of came around from the Soviet bloc, and their shenanigans throughout the Olympic Games, mainly up and through the 80s. And so that was really kind of the difference. We didn't change anything else in our system essentially over about a 12 to 15-year period. That last run for the last 3 Olympic Games for all of the athletes that I mentioned, until their retirements, which would have been up to 2020, with Brittany Reese, the last of them. Um, and so that was the only thing that changed. The altitude tents, the hyperbaric chambers, the blood lactate testing, checking in on their DNA, and all those things that we had been doing were consistent, and nothing else changed but the addition of carnosine to the daily routine. And so, when we saw that, not just with the Olympic athletes, but, had people like Brett McManus in Ironman who had, 9 course records in Ironman, all of them sub 8 hours. So we also saw the similar results on the endurance side too. It wasn't just the sprint athletes. And then obviously we had, a whole bunch of world champions in the UFC and in major pro boxing, guys like Phil Davis, Alexander Gustafsson, Dominic Cruz, and so the list just goes on in as many sports as we could entangle our fingers across. And so in every place that we had the opportunity to use carnosine and add it to as an adjunct to the daily training regimen for these athletes, they increasingly started dominating their sports. You look at guys like extreme sports is another example. Guys like Pierre-Luc Gagnon, a vert skateboarder. He was competing in just in that during and after that era of Tony Hawk, who everybody's familiar with. And Pierre has like a dozen more X Games medals than Tony Hawk. I mean, he was significantly more decorated. He also competed during that Shaun White era. And Pierre, being the Canadian, the media didn't shine a lot of light on him. But he was absolutely obliterating. There wasn't competition. I mean, he was incredible. And then the same thing with Marc Marquez in MotoGP, which is not a sport a lot of Americans are super familiar with, although there is one MotoGP race here in the United States in Texas. But Marc Marquez is, even at his young age, who just completed a comeback after 3 years of injury and won another championship, now tied for the record of the most ever in history at a pretty young age, considered by a lot to be the greatest of all time in that sport. So Pierre-Luc Gagnon, by far the greatest of all time in his sport. You got, Marc Marquez in his sport, arguably, you know, eking out over Rossi and some of the other guys in that sport who are incredible as well, as the greatest of all time. And so, for us at Institute for Human Kinetics, we've literally watched these guys rewrite the record books. And it's hard to find a sport where lactical athletes haven't completely dominated it.
Wow. If anyone's listening to this, and that is an impressive list of people, and if you're wondering, well, has this product been tried and tested? Yes, the answer is yes, for a very long time and by some very, very high level athletes. And what's exciting, Chad, is people might say, oh, well, I'm not a top sports performing athlete, and PBs and seconds off times don't really matter in my everyday reality. But how is this bringing it back to general health and well-being? Because everyone's humans, and our physical bodies are the same. So how does this bring it back to everybody?
Well, I'll first briefly speak to the non-elite athletes, and the ones that are maybe interested in performing really well and maybe don't think that it's achievable. We have countless stories of people who have never been on a podium in their sport using the product one time and then winning and being on the podium. And so I think that's as empowering and fulfilling as somebody hoisting that gold medal, because you have people who are exceeding what might even genetically be possible, which is why topical technology is so incredible. And so, with that being said, the pivot to general health and wellness that expands to literally everyone, because when you see those number of research studies that you put up on the graphic, and there's so many different conditions that affect people where carnosine can strongly mitigate the symptomology of it, and potentially even the etiology of it itself. That is something to get really excited about, because there's probably not a person alive over the age of 10 that doesn't have something going on in their physical makeup where there could be some improvements, and they could sleep a little better, or deal with certain foods a little better, not have as much stress or cortisol release in the body. And then all the way up to people who are recovering from injury, or maybe have had severe injuries even, or have diabetes or rheumatoid arthritis or fibromyalgia, or neuropathy, or any of these things that are common ails for the average person. When you start to look at all of those things and you see what carnosine can do and the impact it can have, based on all the strong, um, very well established mechanistic powers it has in the human body, like it's anti-inflammatory, it's really powerful scavenger of free radicals, advanced glycation end products, heavy metals like copper and zinc, its ability to calm down hyperexcitability and neurotoxicity with the nervous system. The list is quite long in what it can do in the body. And that's why you see so many of those studies and how they have exploded over the last 20 years, because more people have become aware. Oh, wow, what is this? How can we make use of it medically? And they get as far as, cell culture, which is, a petri dish, or maybe even rodent studies and not, or something of that nature. And then you run into the oral first pass metabolism problem, and it brings you back down to ground zero again. So that's why the topical technology is so exciting, and these are all the different benefits that can be had from it.
Well, it's I kind of look at it like this when I'm looking at a product to try myself and my family. If it's good enough for these guys, and we're just going to pull up a little slide here, it's going to be good enough for me, because I know the testing and everything that professional athletes, I don't even know, but you certainly do. Now, see if you can spot there's some carnosine gel in this locker room. And could you just explain who this is that's using carnosine gel, please, Chad?
Yeah, looks like Team USA, the predominant gold medal team, both men and women. Sorry for any Canadians that are listening, but it took us 47 years to get to get another one. So, what's really interesting is what we do know is that both Team USA and Team Canada hockey is using topical carnosine, and so perhaps that's why you're seeing such even battles going deep into overtime, with both teams being fresh despite literally giving everything they have on the ice. They're still able to perform at a high level all the way through those overtime. And so yeah, that was an epic gold medal game with Team USA and Canada, and I don't know how much of a role that plays with both teams, on an even playing field with when it comes to topical carnosine. But certainly, I could concede that Connor McDavid had arguably one of the best Olympics of all time. But Team USA goes home with that gold medal.
Well, that is just truly encouraging and amazing, and well done for the years and years. I'm just grateful that these athletes and Olympians aren't keeping it a secret anymore, and that we can get our hands on it too. So, we're going to change gears a little bit here, and we want to talk about the patent of this technology worldwide. Could you break down why the science behind the patent is so strong?
Sure. So essentially, as we developed the technology, we realized, we had the potential to really have a patent that was special in the sense that not only did it provide the obvious IP protection that a patent has and instills for you, but also that the patent would guarantee nobody else could knock off our product. And that is, very difficult to achieve with certain types of technologies. And if we were able to kind of set a range for the technology that if somebody were to be outside of that range so as to avoid the patent, it would render the technology ineffective. So it's not going to work. And so there's really no way around the protection that we have for the IP because you cannot create a knockoff version where you slightly change the ingredients to make it look like different technology because then it renders it ineffective. And so we really have a monopoly on the ability to use the technology that we have created that our IP is created. And so that basically guarantees that we have no competition. There's no way for anybody else to come to the market with a similar technology because it literally will not work. And so that's what's so fascinating about the design of what we thought we could accomplish with it and were successful, and also the fact that it included so many other different pieces of technology that we can include in ours in the future, and all those things were included in the patent.
Amazing. Many people are intrigued by the topical delivery, especially the ability to apply it directly to where the benefits are needed. So why is this such a game changer, that ability to just apply it to where it's needed?
Well, as I mentioned earlier in the conversation, there's some places in the body that have limited blood flow or no blood flow at all. And so an oral approach is going to be rendered completely ineffective or minimally effective. And so this allows somebody to acutely, be able to have the benefits of something topically and pretty rapidly too. That's another thing that, depending some things, the route that they need to take time course wise before you see a benefit within the body sometimes can be long, and topical technology can offer a rapid delivery. And so that would really give you the benefit to take different places in the body that may not be able to have blood flow and therefore a therapeutic effect from something orally, and you can have a topical solution for that.
Okay. You mentioned that it is a dipeptide and peptides are everywhere. Could you compare this to any technology that's maybe available in an injectable or oral peptides? Why is this approach superior, different? And why doesn't the topical form get broken down the same way as pills or injections? You've just explained that with pills. But could you go a little bit more into perhaps peptide injectables?
Sure. So, peptides are definitely a buzzword right now. And there's a lot of technologies out there, BPC 157, Ozempic. Those are ones that a lot of people are familiar with to provide examples. And, those technologies, similar to a lot of the diabetes medication, I believe there's at least 9 diabetes medications that have to be injected with a syringe, some of them multiple times a day. So that's very evasive, and nobody really wants to do that. And so topical technology obviously provides the advantage of not being evasive, right? I mean, it's like applying lotion, moisturizing lotion to your skin and getting all these benefits. Also, if you are injecting something, your dose effect is going to be much smaller than utilizing the surface area of the skin, which is the largest organ in the body, as we all know. And so it gives you a much larger area for potential application and therapeutic benefit. You just can't get that from a patch and you just can't get that from an injection, and you'd have to do dozens of injections around the entire body, which is obviously nonsensical, right? So, you know, just like there's no competition because of the patent in the space, there's also no real competition in delivery method and methodology for the impact it can have on the body. It's really apples and oranges.
Okay. So, as a scientist, what combination of evidence do you feel truly convinced you, that deep knowing and the broader scientific community, that this technology works? Whether it's, I know you've looked at equine studies over the whole scope of everything that you've ever done, which is a lot. What is it that's really convinced you that this gel works?
Well, I mean, there's an entire field of evidence. So there's not really necessarily any convincing that needed to be done per se. Being a scientist, that is my job to evaluate evidence, the quality of the evidence. And you pulled up the graphic of how many thousands of studies there are on carnosine. So that speaks for the efficacy of carnosine itself, the peptide, and what it can do in the body. And the topical technology that has been available, for the better part of the last 30 years. There hasn't been a lot of new additions to that technology. That's the work that we've been doing, was to bring new approaches to that. And so it's a pretty widely established field of science. I can definitely say the pharmaceutical field has put a lot of time, money, and effort into developing technologies in a topical transdermal space over the last 10 years. It's grown exponentially tenfold the interest that you would have found prior to the last 10 years. And so I think it's a pretty clear direction, that a lot of people want to move in, because it allows for there to be therapeutic impact on the body without a lot of the side effects that come from pharmaceutical drugs. I mean, obviously, pharmacology has done some incredible things throughout our history. If you look at things like penicillin and some of the painkillers that are available, and all the different, anything in between that is available to us, but a lot of the things that are available come with significant side effects that are detrimental to quality of life. And so this avoids all of that. So there's just so many advantages, that it's really difficult to not point yourself in that direction when you're looking for the best possible way to address a lot of these general health and wellness problems facing the average person nowadays.
Yeah, so on those general health and wellness problems, big ones that everyone faces and always wants to know more about: anti-aging, anti-inflammatory support, enhanced muscle performance, cognitive benefits, full body cellular protection. Like, these are all things that this gel is helping. Can you talk about that scope that this one topical gel has, and the molecule that's carnosine? How does it do all of those things?
Sure. So, I mean, it's really is not all that complex once you really start to look at it, because topical technology is well established, and there's a whole chain of scientific evidence, for our technology and other technologies that are out there. And so when you pair that with what carnosine can do, then you can see the potential for all the different benefits that carnosine has been shown, to accomplish within the human body. And so, the multi mechanisms at once is something that might also be unique. Carnosine is the only thing that we've seen in science or medicine that has direct access to every cell, or extreme through the membrane, or extremely strong carriers. And so, when you look at that perspective, it's pretty easy to understand that it has the ability in the body to say, where am I needed, and what can I do to help? And that's why, as the graphic goes up, it's called a smart molecule. There's been multiple research groups who have referred to it in the scientific literature and published papers as a smart drug. And because it is capable of doing these things in the human body and also recognizing where the greatest need is. And that is something that is pretty unique and very interesting to most scientists, in that it can, if there's multiple things wrong with an individual, it can learn how to prioritize them immediately and try and have its impact upon their health where it's most needed. And so if you have something like that in the human body that can do all those different things that we talked about, the anti-glycation of end products, preventing the buildup from carbohydrate and fat metabolism, chelating the heavy metals out of the body, preventing the inflammation, preventing the nervous system from being hyperexcited, you're going to see a ton of health benefits independent of all the the disease states that we're talking about that could potentially be impacted by carnosine, and there are well evidenced in the scientific literature for that, like diabetes. And so the neuroprotective benefits, Dr. Tim Sharp and I wrote a paper about this. And, there's all these different shared pathologies where carnosine can provide a relief for that pathology in the neurobiology of the brain. And so, it's the final frontier for something if you are looking to impact people's, quality of life in a way that's going to move the needle, and doesn't come with any toxic side effects. It is easy to use and has a rapid impact. I mean, it is, it's a godsend in that regard for all the different unique properties it has that make it so helpful to people.
Wow. Well, the scope of this is just amazing. I know some people are coming and they're trying the gel because they have a sore shoulder and they're ending up with better sleep and a better metabolism. So it's just how you explained it being a smart molecule. All we need to do, anyone that's watching this, we invite you to just try it, put it on where it hurts and see what happens, because all of that is going on in the background. Thank you so much, Chad, for all of that information. We really appreciate all the years of hard work and energy that you and Tim and everyone else has put into this. And we're really so excited now to be able to share this with everyone.
Oh, awesome. I always enjoy discussing the technology and carnosine and its benefits. Let's get the information out to as many people as we can. So thank you, everybody, for your time. I definitely always enjoy these discussions.
Yeah, and we will have many, many more, because that is the mission here. We want to get the message of carnosine out to the world so we can help more people and make a huge impact. So thank you for your time, Chad. Next week, we have another expert on. Giselle is going to be going through the anti-aging benefits. So stay tuned this time next week if you would like to learn more. And it is the Carnosine Conversation next week. We invite you to our Facebook group, the Carnosine Lab, and please check out justtryit.today. You can see Chad in loads of more interviews talking about this molecule if you want to dive deeper into the science. But feel free to look up those science papers yourself and Google the benefits of carnosine. And thank you so much, because you heard it all here. This is the beginning of something so big, and we just appreciate you being a part of it. Thanks, everyone.